cyber criminals. These are the really prevalent cyber risk facing organizations today. And the risk is that we're all grappling with the change to remote working.
Welcome to Ways to Work, a Willis Towers Watson podcast series exploring the modern workplace through the lenses of people and risk, with a focus on the Philippines and the broader Asian market. We offer HR and risk professionals at every level, in every industry, access to current thinking on topics that matter most to employers and employees.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this episode where today we're going to be focusing on a topic that's very important to the environment that all of us are operating in nowadays because of COVID-19 and the changes that we've had to introduce to our working arrangements.
My name is Joaquin Uy. I'm the deputy head for the CRB segment here in the Philippines, and I'll be your host for today's episode.
It goes without saying that the threat of cyber risks has definitely been heightened. And the thing about it is that even prior to the pandemic making its full effects felt, we've seen an increase in the number of threats, hacking incidents, ransomware, so on and so forth. And all of these seem to have gone up a notch. And for the next few minutes, we're going to be speaking about the threat of cyber risks, what we've been seeing from a threat environment in the, not just from a regional, but also from a global perspective. And take time to think about practical ways where all of us can protect ourselves and mitigate these sort of risks. I'm joined by none other than our regional lead for cyber risks in Asia from Willis Towers Watson, Jennifer Tiang. Jennifer holds the distinguished privilege of wearing two hats. She's worn an underwriting hat, and now she's in the broker side of the insurance business. Jennifer, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, Joaquin. Very well, thank you. Really great to be here with you this afternoon.
Thanks a lot for making time and agreeing to join us today. Take me to the day that Singapore or its government basically announced that the circuit breaker was in place.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I remember it was such a time of it almost felt surreal. I remember we had a phone tree, so like a text message thing that was a way for all of them to get to notify us immediately, what to do. I remember receiving the text, and I just thought, what? And I just thought a silly thought I had was, oh my gosh, my plant in my office, it's going to die. I'm not going to get back to it. But they had been telling us for a couple of weeks to bring our laptop home every day. So, we were at the ready to resume work from home. And so you did that, every day. And then one day it did, appear, yes, you will be not returning into the office. And that was it was really like the rug being pulled out from under your feet, and you took for granted your everyday routines, like you going to the coffee shop, like going to see your colleagues, and then so to work from home, it just seemed very unceremonious and very abrupt, like you said. But one situation, this was after our first circuit breaker, and then there was a little gap between our second circuit breaker, but in that gap, I had actually moved house. And so moving house and having to get my laptop or my connection had to be configured in a certain way. But when I moved into my new house, it wasn't possible to be configured, and I was trying to get access to our IT people. So there were, I think it was a day and a half where I had no connectivity, and I remember thinking, wow, this is really hitting home how reliant we are
Yeah.
on connectivity. And I was really stressed. There were urgent client deliverables. I had to be on meetings.
Mhm.
So these had to be conducted via my phone. And I just thought, imagine if, I mean, I'm very aware of cyber risk, but this was me living it, I suppose. Like this was me
Yeah.
not having, for more than 24 hours access to our through our VPN, to our network drives, access to client files, and it was really disruptive, very stressful. And I just thought, wow, imagine this on a large scale basis. Like imagine this for 200 colleagues in an organization. And I guess we're really so reliant on our IT teams. I think they're the unsung heroes as well of this
Yeah.
remote working
Definitely.
shift. They're
Definitely.
working like double time, triple time, trying to meet all of these IT service help desk notes, also trying to make sure that the business is conducted in a secure way. So I think, yeah, we really should give a hand to our IT teams. And I just thought, wow, like the 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 fate of organizations really in this time is carried more or less in IT teams.
Mhm.
In prior times there were perhaps other workarounds, but I mean we cannot overstate how important they are for that seamless kind of operation. That was a real lesson for me when we went to our second circuit breaker.
And I guess we can both agree that in some ways, our IT support teams are also frontliners
Yeah.
in this battle.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the number of times I'm sure all of us at one point have had to reach out to our IT team to sort out something. Even after you read all the documentation and try to help yourself, at some point we've had some help from our IT teams.
I know that we've seen a tremendous amount of change, and you know, as we rely upon technology in a far greater way, because of COVID-19, because of restrictions to mobility, and because we want to make sure that services are provided in as seamless manner as possible.
Mm.
We've also seen that it comes with an exchange. From what you've seen over the last year and a half, what have you observed to be like the greatest threats to a business from a cyber point of view?
Really good question. I think everyone's going to agree that the last year and a half, it's just completely upended all our kind of notions of business as usual. But I think, like you mentioned earlier, even before that, there was an increasing understanding of how reliant we were on technology and connectivity, system reliance on data to actually, carry out organizational work. If you could kind of think of this move to remote working as the largest global en masse digital transformation project the world has seen. I heard that the move to remote working a year and a half ago from every country, it kind of brought forward IT roadmaps. It shortened them by 5 years, 7 years. So it really pushed everything ahead of what might have been in normal times, a 2 year, 5 year IT digital transformation rollout. So, in terms of the most significant threats, it really has been the fact that we've got very opportunistic and sophisticated and very intelligent and smart commercial ransomware groups, or not even ransomware groups. They are the most frequently kind of flagged up by threat intelligence. But cyber criminals, these are the really prevalent cyber risk facing organizations today. And the risk is that we're all grappling with the change to remote working. We're a year and a half in now, so hopefully, systems are more or less bedded in. But there are still open vulnerabilities. Like colleagues are still quite dislocated from each other, and IT teams are dislocated from the rest of the organization. So everyone's working in this remote working environment, and so in this kind of business as unusual kind of environment, it does open organizations up to more more pervasive threats from these cyber criminal groups. And the frightening thing is that I'll just take ransomware as an example. They're making a lot of money. It's increasingly lucrative to be partaking in this kind of cyber crime activity. And we're all asking, it's like, how has this risen to such almost like epidemic levels? The rates of losses and notifications that I know insurers are sharing back to us are pretty frightening. They're saying they receive notifications daily or weekly. How has it risen so dramatically? And it's almost like there's a perfect storm in terms of ransomware. And just to recap for the listeners, ransomware very simply is malware that is deployed on systems to encrypt them. And so you're kind of held at hostage by a ransomware group until you pay the amount that they're demanding, and then they'll send the decryption key and you'll have access to your networks or files again. So it's that kind of extortion activity. And it's been a perfect storm in a way because of the rise in, well, on the one hand, remote working, and on the other hand, also the rise in cryptocurrency, and anonymized, not untraceable, like technically, it is traceable, but extremely, extremely difficult to trace. It's subject to heavy cryptographic tools to make it very, very hidden. So the rise in that makes it almost like a perfect vehicle to carry out these extortion activities. Before it was kind of in the absence of cryptocurrency, the cyber criminals would have all these other steps they'd have to go through to try to hide or mask, the funds being transferred, like opening up a bank account. And the world has gotten very strong at KYC measures and things like that for currency that is recognized by governments. So when you've got something like cryptocurrency that is outside of the government remit and not subject to perhaps the same oversight and regulation, there you have a perfect kind of money mule. So yeah, that's been an interesting trend we've seen.
You shared a bit about ransomware, which is certainly a topic in its own that I would like to touch on for today. Undoubtedly, one effect that this has had on us, and this is still somehow related to the threat of cyber risk, is that the human connection has been missed a lot. Here in Manila, I look forward to seeing clients, to speaking to them, and being with them personally. And obviously, that's been curtailed very significantly. I've had one face-to-face meeting in the last year and a half,
Oh wow.
and I remember telling my colleagues about it, and I said that number one, it felt great to be out,
Yes.
and number two, it felt great to actually be in front of a client. A few years back, we actually came out with a study that a very significant portion of cyber risks was born of the human side of the business, meaning
Yes.
employees are the highest sources of risks.
Yes. Yeah. I think if
From
I
your
recall correctly, it was
perspective,
66% of the
yes, correct.
claims. Yes.
66%. Yes. So, are you seeing that is still a trend nowadays, or has there been a change? Not necessarily because of the pandemic, but because, as you rightfully say, we're just so reliant on technology. Share with us your views regarding that, Jennifer.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that trend is consistent today, and I believe, the human element of cyber risk is going to continue as long as it is us doing the work and having that interface with technology, until the point we kind of get stood down for robots or AI. But I think that human element is a very, very key risk management consideration. And in this role as the regional cyber lead for Willis in Asia, I'm really lucky. I get to speak to quite a few CISOs, and I always try to pick their brain. I want to learn more about how they're at the front line of cyber risk. They're the ones tasked with overseeing the risk management practices and IT security for the organization. And I mean, I just ask them, where do you even start? And they always say, like, people, their staff are the strongest line of defense, but they're also the weakest link. So you have that paradox there. And so if you are constantly educating them and making them cyber savvy, just making them more a bit more cynical about every email that comes in your
Yeah.
inbox, and being aware of something that doesn't look quite right. I know in this kind of remote working time and everyone's very busy and we're trying to be very responsive, so we act quickly on emails that reach our inboxes. But we need to have that balance, that need of urgency and responsiveness with being very aware of the threats of, very sophisticated hackers creating spoof emails that look exactly like, Joaquin's email coming into the inbox and, looking completely legitimate, but in fact being from a bad actor. And then if we add that human element, we click on the link that's in the spoof email, and all bets are off. No matter how strong the IT security controls can be, there's always going to be that human interface. So that's been the key message that a lot of the CISOs that we work with have been spreading towards their staff, and it has to be a ground up approach. Anyone that has access to the network or access to email, which it really is everyone in the organization, is a key line of defense, but also a point of vulnerability.
Now, I would imagine that, through these phishing emails, and, if an employee is unknowingly clicks on an email, this could potentially, or a result of doing so, could potentially lead to ransomware attacks penetrating, the networks or the systems of companies. What's important for clients nowadays is that they are aware of the coverage and limitations of a cyber insurance policy. I mean, the last thing, of course, that we would want clients to get the impression of is that this is the panacea for all
Mm,
for all the
absolutely.
problems, all the concerns related to cyber risks. The cyber market is seeing some changes, in terms of um, appetite, in terms of risk rating, and so on.
Mm,
A few years ago, when the product was launched here in the Philippines, and this was probably back in 2013, thereabouts, um, we were always being asked by clients, should we consider this? Should we buy this product for us? And of course, one consideration would be it really depends on the nature of your business and what you think, or rather, how you think this type of product would benefit you relative to how you operate. Now, and one thing that we would also say to them was, now would be the best time to purchase this because the costs are not as prohibitive yet.
mm,
Given that the market is evolving, and if a client were to come to you and say, Jennifer, I need guidance on, I know that I need cyber, but I need guidance vis-a-vis how much the cost would be
mm.
and the protection that I'm going to get. What would what would, not to put you in a spot, but what would your recommendation be if a client were to come to you with those concerns, um, when they're at the point in their journey where they're evaluating the purchase of this type of solution?
Yeah, yeah. And I completely understand the clients. you have to really do a deep consideration because this is a new insurance spend. This is not budgeted. This is completely new um, to the risk risk management budget. And so for a CFO or the risk manager, of course, they need to be doing the homework, and it needs to be a very compelling reason why you're making this new insurance spend. Because if you're answering to a board, it's not going to cut it just to say, oh, I saw a headline in a newspaper and it recommended that cyber insurance be considered. So I completely understand. And I know our practice in Asia is definitely not to leap to the insurance part. We try to understand the clients where they're at in terms of their cyber risk. So a lot of the time they may be heard from a board member saying, "Oh, you should look into cyber insurance," or maybe it's just been something that's been tabled and they want to explore it. So really, it's for us to sit down with them and understand, what is the amount of risk that you're facing. So
Mhm.
exploring the like uh, kind of quantification, like what is your maximum possible loss in the
Yeah.
event, you know, X number of data records that you hold were breached, or X number of hours. What does X number of hours downtime mean to you? That might not mean that much if you're a retail store, a bricks and mortar retail store. As opposed to an e-commerce, 6 hours of you not being able to access your networks might not actually mean that much financially for you. So you're like thinking, wow, we can actually absorb that cost. So all these different questions, because cyber risk is so dynamic and multifaceted, it's not unfortunately it's not as easy as looking at a property schedule of values
Mhm.
saying,
Yeah, I agree.
this building is worth this much. So we have to ask a lot of questions and work with the different teams within the organization to really understand holistically, what is the loss that you could be up for. And then from there, um, the cyber market has undergone a change, and I think we have to understand the market change in the broader context. It's kind of seeing how the cyber market that we call it hardened. So you know,
Yeah.
in layman's terms, kind of gotten more expensive.
Mhm.
But we have to understand that in the broader context, that means that claims are being made. So that means the risk is there, and it means that policies are being called on.
I
So
agree.
insurers are paying out. So that is good. That's a silver lining, I guess. Even though the premium you pay now compared to the premium you might have paid 5 years ago is going to be higher, I guess that's a response to the more active risk environment your business is operating in. So it is really all relative, and I think the cyber insurance really has to be there as the last piece of the puzzle. So after you've made the adequate investments into your own front line, so you've invested in multi-factor authentication on all endpoints for corporate resources. That's a really key question a lot of insurers ask. Endpoint detection software. There are various kind of baseline things that we can work with our clients to make sure that they have, which is two pronged. So it's first of all, that getting to that baseline is helping them, uh, and on a day-to-day basis, preventing the risk of a cyber event happening to them. But then also, it's making them more insurable. So the insurer terms that will come after they've invested into their uh, in-house IT security, then transferring that residual risk to the insurer is going to be a lot cheaper, a lot more competitive. So I think we're moving away from a transactional insurance approach, I suppose, to a lot more of a dynamic and more advisory focused one.
Well, it certainly has been a very insightful afternoon, Jennifer, and I thank you for sharing your time with us, your expertise and your knowledge. I'm pretty sure that our listeners have taken away a very important lessons from this episode.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Joaquin.
Okay, so thanks to all of you, our dear listeners of the Ways to Work podcast. We're going to continue our conversations with our leaders and experts around the key topics on people in risk and what matters most to employers and employees in the modern workplace.
Thank you for joining us for this Willis Towers Watson podcast featuring the latest thinking on the intersection of people, capital, and risk. For more information, visit the Insights section of willistowerswatson.com.